Council approved this on the 3rd of November. This concerns precluding farm animals from our city right-of-ways and parks. There are two issues to talk about, I think, on second reading. The provision passed on November 3rd on first reading had one definition of livestock, and I mentioned at the time that we would propose at second reading a different definition of livestock, and that is included in the version that you have before you, and says that in 9.08.010I, that's in section 1 of the proposed ordinance on page 2 of 6, it would read, livestock has the same meaning as set forth in ORS 164.055 sub 2, and the portion that did say means domesticated animals typically raised on a farm or a ranch is deleted. All this does is make sure that we're just using the definition of livestock that is used in the Oregon statutes.
What is that definition?
It is just a moment. Livestock means a ratite, a Citizen, horse, gelding, mare, filly, stallion, colt, mule, ass, jenny, bull, steer, cow, calf, goat, sheep, lamb, llama, pig, or hog.
E-I-E-I-O.
Yes.
Okay.
Two of those, I don't know what they are. The first two.
So these are domesticated farm animals.
They're farm animals, yes.
And
The
so something like a llama or all those Peruvian creatures are not included in this?
They are included. That was one of them.
Oh, sorry.
Llamas are listed.
Okay, Rich.
No, I'm just remarking that a hawk is considered livestock. And did you say hawk?
No.
Oh, I was going to say, what?
I thought you did.
Dogs. Oh.
No, hogs.
Hogs. Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out what I said that sounded like that.
Sorry, I've been grinding on that.
Okay.
Trying to mental picture. I don't have a question.
Falconer with the, yeah.
The second area for change, so if that's acceptable to you, I've now read it, so it's been read, and
May I just check a little bit more? So something
Yes.
like a neutrina or a mink is not going to be prohibited in this?
under this, under this definition, no, you could bring your mink on the
Yeah, or
on the
ferret,
street,
for
yes.
example. Well, the reason I'm asking is when we tie it to the state of Oregon's definition, then the state of Oregon can change it, you know, if mink farming or something they want to regulate, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, we have some strange creature that can or cannot be on our property, that's all.
But of course, we can change too, if they
Yeah.
change.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion on this, or do you want to ask questions?
Well, I would propose we hear the second change also and
I'm
make
sorry,
one
go
motion
ahead.
at one
There's
time.
another part to it.
The second change had to do with the exception, an exemption for horses. There was conversation at first reading about possibly creating an exemption altogether for horses, or asking staff to come back with some proposal, which we have done. If you look at the bottom of page 5 of 6, we initially looked at maybe some kind of geographic definition that you would exempt horses from, but in talking with planning, we could not figure out a way that really made sense with any of our other sort of geographic designations. So what we've ended up proposing is basically a reasonable and prudent standard that was taken from the basic law, vehicle law, and says, except as otherwise permitted by this ordinance, no person shall drive, ride, or lead livestock or wild animals in any street, public right-of-way, or city park, except under the terms of a valid special use permit issued by the city administrator. And then that exception reads, in addition to the requirements of ORS 814.150, which concerns some things you should not do with horses by state law, a person may ride or lead one horse without obtaining a special use permit, provided the activity is reasonable and prudent, having due regard to all of the following: A, the traffic; B, the surface and width of the highway; C, the hazard at intersections; D, weather; and E, visibility. And the notion is that policeman understands pretty much what prudent and reasonable and prudent means, and can interpret it with respect to horses as well.
And there's nothing about what the horses leave behind to be taken into consideration.
Well, that would be covered in a different
Yeah.
area of the law, of our
Okay,
ordinances.
we have several questions here. Steph, and then Carol, and possibly Mike.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the reasonable and prudent in terms of a person knowing what's reasonable and prudent.
I'm sorry, say it again?
If the rider would know what is reasonable and prudent, it seems a bit arbitrary to me. And also, what about a person riding a mule?
Well, as it's written, the mule is not exempted, a horse is.
That seems a bit arbitrary. I
Well,
mean,
we can exempt mules too if you want.
well, I mean,
Yeah, hey.
I think that you should exempt mules if you're going to exempt horses.
Well, that's,
Motion.
if you want to make an amendment, that would be fine.
I would amend that mules be allowed to be ridden in the city where it is reasonable and prudent for horses to be ridden in the city.
Okay, we have a motion to amend at second reading this ordinance.
So
As-
would it be acceptable then to simply add into the language that I read to you earlier, where it says, in addition to requirements of ORS 814.150, a person may ride or lead one horse or one mule without obtaining a special
We need to
permit?
have a second on the motion.
I'm sorry?
We need to have a second on the motion.
Yeah, we don't have a second to that motion, but
Yeah.
I'm proposing
I'll second that
the
motion.
wording of the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded, but the city attorney is proposing a simpler wording.
Yeah.
That acceptable?
That's acceptable.
This is
Sure.
second reading language.
I'm sorry?
It's second reading, we need to have the language, I need to be able to, right?
I just read it.
Barb, what's the point?
I didn't get it, but that's okay.
Well,
Then
it's in.
let's take the time and make sure you get it, that's
Okay.
all.
Is it in your communication?
It's in the ordinance itself, it's highlighted in the ordinance itself. Anything that's new from the first reading to
Okay,
the
I
second
got
reading
that,
is
but the
highlighted.
mule, the amendment part here.
We're adding the words "or one mule."
Okay, that's what I
That's
needed to
what
know.
we
It sounded a
needed.
little more complicated than that.
Good, that's good.
Thank you.
No ferrets. Dave,
Was there a second? I didn't.
oh, yeah, Pam seconded. Dave Cantor, do you want to get into this fray?
No, I'll withhold any comment until after you vote on the amendment.
Okay, good. We look forward to that comment. Carol, do you want to speak to the motion?
I do. I have a question.
Well, go ahead.
I don't understand, how is this going to be enforced?
Somebody calls up the police
So it's going
department
to be
and says somebody's
complaint-driven, correct? So if Aaron Fletcher gets a horse, he's going to be able to walk it all over town?
No, it has to be
Has to be what?
reasonable and prudent.
Well, but your point is that somebody who wanted to challenge the ordinance
Yes.
could just ride a horse someplace, and then a police officer would have to be called and cite him as this is not reasonable and prudent.
Right.
And this is a question to the city attorney. Is this a kind of a flaw in the way we're approaching this?
I'm not sure I'd describe it as a flaw. We are creating an exemption. It was proposed that we create an exemption for horses, and originally, the exemption was an entire exemption. This one is a limited one, because it has to be, the use of the horse under the circumstances has to be reasonable and prudent. But could there be a horse coming down Oak Street under this? Yes. But it sounded like that's what the council wanted to consider.
Mike?
You know what I like about this is when I learned to drive, the Oregon speed law was basic speed, which was the same law. The
Yes.
speed limit was very random, it was enforced, everyone understood it, it worked, except maybe Mr. Dawkins, but anyway, it was fine. And it's funny that we're going to these extremes to permit things and not permit things, and then we're using this generic old rule of law to define how we're going to enforce it. And if we really could enforce it, we wouldn't need really any of the ordinance, which is funny that.
Well,
you
that's
know,
a bit of a leap.
Well, it
isn't
is a leap, but it takes me back to a lot of years ago when the common sense side of it replaced a lot of the laws, and we seem to be almost getting there, but now we're going backwards to make a change. Because, I mean, the basic speed law was around forever. I don't even remember when it went away, but I do remember it going away. And so now we're making all these exceptions, but we're going to do an enforcement that's kind of odd.
Shall we hear from the chief?
Yeah.
My impression of this is that it is workable because of the way that it's worded. The officer that gets the complaint or that observes this would look at the totality of circumstances, what time of day, what the event is that's going on downtown. If someone wanted to ride their horse or their mule downtown at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning when there is nobody down there, no vehicular traffic, then given the totality of circumstances, that is probably allowable by the proposed language. But if somebody wanted to ride their animal down there in the middle of the day when there was significant vehicular and pedestrian traffic, then that doesn't meet the threshold for the exemption, and I would think that the officer would be well armed to do something about it.
And isn't it true that our officers make these kinds of decisions all the time in their daily work?
Yes.
They're always assessing situations for, if not prudent, the prudent standard, other kinds of standards of appropriate behavior. And
Yeah, I believe that that's exactly true, Counselor.
And I hear a rumor that they're going to do some training on recognizing
prudent standards.
horse behavior. Okay, so do we need to have further discussion, or can we move to a vote on Dave?
Can I just mention
Yeah.
two things? One, the basic rule is still in effect in Oregon.
Is it really?
It is, yes. And secondly, you had on your look-ahead another ordinance the Parks Commission was proposing. This really takes the place of it. It's not, so we'll be taking that off the look-ahead if you do indeed pass this.
Okay.
They were concerned about the very same issue of farm animals being brought into the park.
Okay.
So they can bring them into, a horse into, or donkey.
Under this
Into the
exception,
park.
yes.
Subject to the judgment of an officer.
Right.
Into the
But
park.
If the officer knows,
the
if there's a complaint.
park proper or the roadway of the park?
Either, actually,
They could actually go through the park lawn on a horse.
if it were reasonable and prudent and met all the other terms in here, yes. I doubt very much that parks would view that as reasonable and prudent. It's not a place where there's a lot of room for horses.
Yeah.
And then if somebody is cited once, then if they come back and do it again, then they're on notice, right?
The other thing I should notice, this is not just complaint-driven, as the chief said. If a policeman observes a problem, policeman will act.
I think we should vote.
Call for the question.
It's too late, I called for the vote.
Okay, good.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Marsh,
Yes.
Rosenthal,
Yes.
Boyson,
No,
Morris,
Yes.
Seffinger.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Was that
No, that was an amendment.
Mule amendment?
That was the amendment.
Oh, that was the mule amendment, I'm sorry. Okay, now can we vote on the,
No,
Dave?
I don't believe we have a motion, which I'd be happy to.
ordinance as amended.
Yeah, but I was saying Dave, because Dave Kenner was looking at me like he was going to say something. Did you want to speak?
I didn't recognize two of the words in the state statute, which is, I found unusual, because
Those words.
I know a lot of words. And I looked them up quickly. Ratite refers to ostriches and emus and other birds with a ratite breastbone.
Oh,
And citizen, it's actually how it's pronounced, although it's spelled P-S-I-T-T-A-C-I-N-E, would make for a wonderful word of the day. It's pronounced citizen. Refers to parrots. Just for your information.
yeah. Okay, we got it. Now, may I have a roll call vote on the main motion as amended?
There's
I
no
don't have a
motion.
motion yet.
How did we amend it?
I'm sorry, I thought we had a motion. How could we amend a motion that we don't have?
The city attorney read the changes that were at second reading.
Yeah,
There was a motion to amend the ordinance, another motion to amend the ordinance to include "or mule" in the language of 9.08.
and didn't we voted on that?
And you did. Now you need to vote, make a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
Thought that's what I said, but, okay, may I have, will someone make a motion?
I move to approve the second reading of an ordinance titled, an ordinance amending AMC 908-010 and 908-040 concerning keeping of animals as amended, and adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Masterful. Roll call, please.
Marsh,
Yes.
Rosenthal,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Seffinger,
Yes.
Boyson.
no.
Okay. Now we'll be straight, then it's going to go much more smoothly from here on out. Sure. Okay, number 2, second reading by title only of an ordinance titled, an ordinance amending AMC Chapter 916 to require dog licensing and declare certain dog behaviors to be public nuisances.
Okay,
Mr. Loman.
again, on first reading, this dealt